Okay, welcome to another episode of The Fundable Founder. I'm here today with Davide Marini, who is the founder and CEO of Inkbit. Welcome.
Thank you, Charlie, for inviting me. And it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you so much for supporting us.
Yeah, no problem. So,
Great, thank you.
I think today's discussion will be interesting for a lot of people out there because you didn't raise venture capital. You raised a lot of non-dilutive capital and some strategic funding. But before we get to that, why don't you tell us a little bit about Inkbit? What's your elevator pitch?
Yeah, so Inkbit is an MIT spin-out. We have built the first 3D printer that is powered by machine vision. So what does that mean? Ours is the only printer that incorporates a vision system, a scanning system that generates a three-dimensional map of each and every layer after deposition so that it can react in real time and can learn from its mistakes. So the results for the users are a much improved level of accuracy and precision. And very importantly, we can use materials that other printers cannot. And we make products for industrial use. We're not focused on the desktop market. And with respect to the sectors that we are operating in, it's the medical, robotics, and industrial automation sectors for the moment.
That's great. And that's primarily, you focus on those sectors primarily because they need the materials that you're using and they need the accuracy, right?
Correct. Yes. 3D printing has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to applications. There are so many that sometimes it's difficult to choose where to start. So in our case, it was entirely driven by customers. We started working with Johnson & Johnson and then with many other companies, and they brought to us very specific problems that they were having that our technology could address. So we worked with them and developing those solutions.
Great. Well, that's a good segue into kind of the origin story of
Yes.
Inkbit. Yeah. Why don't you just tell us about, where this all began?
So it began in the laboratory of Professor Wojtek Matusik. He is also an MIT graduate. He's a professor of computer science and artificial intelligence at MIT. And for many years, he has been working with 3D printing. And his dream was to create a printer that would be better than what exists before. So he has this intuition that it would be important for a printer to see what it's doing. So he wanted to embed a vision system inside the machine to make it much, much more accurate and precise, as I mentioned. So it started as a research project in an academic lab at MIT. And then eventually the team reached out to me and other people with experience in commercializing technologies because they wanted to spin it out as a company. And so they invited me to be the CEO and co-founder of Inkbit. And we spun out the company in the summer of 2017.
Well, that might be a good way to start is, a lot of people who are listening might be thinking about doing a spin out from academia.
Yes.
Any pieces of advice on,
Yep.
I know MIT is really great at spinning out technologies,
Yep.
but any pieces of advice on best practices for spinning out of academia?
I have a lot because I've been on both sides. I was a PhD student at MIT. I've been a postdoc, so I know exactly what it feels to be a scientist. And I know what it feels to be an entrepreneur and to have to raise money. So my most important piece of advice would be, if you can, don't start a company where you have a technology looking for a solution. Where you have a solution looking for a problem. That is very difficult. It can be done. It has been done, but it's very, very, very hard. The better way is to identify what are the major problems out there in the world and can I use my technology to solve them? So when you approach investors, they will not like to hear this is a great solution to a yet to be found problem. They want to hear the reverse. That would be my most important advice.
I couldn't agree more. So you spin out of MIT. What were kind of the first steps for getting your business off the ground? Did you go raise funding right away, or did you, what was the strategy?
We followed always customer demand. So Johnson & Johnson reached out to us even before we spun out the company. They had a specific problem that they wanted to solve, and they suspected, based on reading papers from the team at MIT, that our technology could solve their problem. So their interest became stronger and stronger, and they were willing basically to fund the development of some portions of our technology non-dilutively. So naturally, we thought, wow, maybe we should actually start a company, because there is a customer willing to pay. And at the same time, we were very fortunate to receive a grant from DARPA to develop the core aspect of our technology, which is the vision system. So DARPA for us has been instrumental in many, many different points in our lives. And we are super, super grateful to DARPA and to the National Science Foundation as well. So we have basically got out of MIT because of these two events. We had Johnson & Johnson, private institution, and we had public funding that was available to us. So we spun out and we found an incubator space. We basically had a room in a large incubator space in Kendall Square that turned out to be too expensive for us. So we moved out to Medford, where we currently are. And so those were basically the first steps, and identifying the first team members was very important. And eventually, once we spun out, when we had a little bit of space and we had a customer, that was paying and the grant, then I went to raise our first round. And this came from a strategic investor. This was a connection I had. Basically, a friend of a friend introduced me to the CEO of an Italian company that is the world leader in the manufacturing of packaging equipment for the pharmaceutical industry. And they were very interested in 3D printing. They came to MIT to visit the lab and the company, and they decided to write the first check. That's how we got the first round. Yeah.
So let's dive a little bit deeper there. So I'm sure along the way, people gave you advice about how to deal with strategic investors and the pros and cons of raising money from a strategic investor. Why did you decide to go this strategic route, and what advice would you kind of pass along to people about going the strategic route?
Yeah, so I received many times the advice you're speaking about now. Many people advise me against raising money from strategics, but I must say that I do not understand that advice, because I had a fantastic experience with strategics so far. It's been amazing. It's been really a blast, because not only do they give you money, they're also much less focused on a short-term exit.
Right.
They're much more focused on the long term, and they understand technology super deeply. That's basically the reason why they're investing. They want first access to new technologies that could help them. So in the case of pretty much all our strategics, we are working with them at developing new technologies together. Especially in 3D printing, this is particularly important because I mentioned it's a solution that can be applied to many different problems. So having a strategic at the table essentially brings you, okay, what are the problems that we can solve with our technology today? And now, obviously, several of our strategic investors are now becoming customers. They want to buy the machine. So what more do you want? you get money, you get understanding of the technology, you make progress on your technology, and then you get to sell them a machine. It's amazing. So I don't understand why people are so against strategic funding. We had a fantastic time with them.
I think some of the fear might be that, people think that strategic investors will guide the company to a singular use case that is only good for that company and ignore the rest of the market opportunity. Has any of that happened? Have you had to manage expectations of because you have multiple strategic investors?
Yes. I think that's actually a very good point. I intentionally wanted many strategics at the table because I was simply following that advice. So I was afraid that having maybe just one or two would be dangerous. So I intentionally pursued many. And it turned out to be a good decision because you have many of them at the table. So if there is any occasion where, one of them asks you, okay, I really want you to work on this, they have to say it in front of everybody else.
Right.
So it generates a natural, level playing field. Yes.
Was there any reluctance from the first strategic investor to allow the other strategic investors?
No,
Okay.
no. As I said, it's been a pleasure to work with all these strategics. They've just been, maybe because they don't really reason like a financial investor. They reason more in a very long term. So I never really had any single problem. It's quite amazing. So I'm very happy for our current round. Actually, what's interesting is that these strategics are actually advising me now. Maybe it's the time to get a financial investor into the round. So that's what I'm doing now, because they are themselves afraid of becoming almost like a corporate board.
Yep.
So this was, I think, very wise advice, and that's what I'm doing. Actually, I'm now actually in discussions with some financial investors.
That's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about the grant funding you raised, because I think that'll be an interesting topic for a lot of people. You received support from both DARPA and NSF.
Yep.
That was through the SBIR program?
Correct. Yes.
So yeah, tell us about how did you go about finding an SBIR to applying for the SBIR and winning an SBIR?
Yes. So basically, we simply we read regularly all the requests for proposal that come out, and with NSF we originally worked on a grant for making organ replicas, 3D printed organ replicas for surgical training. And the beauty of the NSF program is I think it's called iCorp. iCorp.
It is, yeah.
So it's a fantastic program. So it was through that program that we basically discovered that the segment, the market for which we had applied, was not as big as we thought. So we went through all this,
You do the customer discovery interview.
Customer discovery, correct.
Yeah, that's a big part of the iCorp program.
Yeah, so basically, out of that exercise, almost came the decision to not, to stop the development for that, to basically phase one.
Yep.
And wait a little bit more to better understand where the market goes. And actually now the market seems to be picking up for organ replicas. So on the DARPA side, what happened was that we wanted to develop a completely new vision system based on optical coherence tomography. And so DARPA basically funded the entire development. It was a direct to phase 2 grant for about $1 million. But the amazing thing about DARPA is that they supported us at every step. And the most amazing thing that happened to us was during COVID, when the pandemic. Basically, what happened was I received a call from an office, from our program officer at DARPA, and basically he said, "Look, whatever work you may want to do or you may be doing for the local Boston area hospitals, we want to write the check. We want to foot the bill. So just tell me what you need and we'll give you the money. We'll find the money." I thought, this is amazing. It's just, in Italy, where I'm originally from, this would never happen. The Department of Defense basically wants to foot the bill for such an emergency situation. This is an amazing country. Welcome to America. It's an amazing country. So anyway, we have been very, very lucky to be supported by DARPA. So, and actually there's something else, but I cannot say it in public now. But all I can say that essentially, not only they helped us develop the first vision system, once we demonstrated good progress, they basically funded many other initiatives. One of them was COVID.
That's great.
And so through that initiative, we've been working closely with the Boston Medical Center for making devices that were both related to COVID and also more long-term.
That's great. Yeah, no, the SBIR programs through the NSF and through DARPA are phenomenal.
Fantastic.
And a great way to really get your technology off the ground and do the customer discovery and other things. So
that's right. And I think there's one more thing that I want to say here. I think it's extremely important to use government funding in conjunction with private capital. So even in my previous startup, which was called Firefly Bioworks, what we did was always, for every dollar that we raised from the government, we match it with a dollar raised from private capital. So that basically I could say this is a win-win situation for everybody, because taxpayer dollars are funded towards initiatives that also private capital believes in. And private capital obviously is very happy to know that for every dollar that they invest, the government matches with one. So it's a fantastic combination when you can match dollar for dollar the basically government money with private capital. I would recommend it strongly.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Any other tips or tricks for winning SBIR applications? I mean, did you use application writers?
No, I did not. I didn't like the idea of application writers, although maybe it's a good idea. I just never tried it. But I remember talking to a program manager in my previous startup, and she was telling me, look, there are so many companies that basically end up writing and winning lots of grants, but then eventually they become almost like, we call them the grant mills.
Yep.
So companies that keep winning this grant because they are so well written, but then they never really develop the commercial product.
Exactly.
We don't like it. So rightfully so. So to me, it felt more like, I don't want to say bad, but it felt a little bit like cheating the system using. I just wanted to say, okay, here we are writing this grant, here what we're gonna do, and that's it. So, and of course, we tried our best to write a good application. It takes a long time to write a good application.
Did you have a lot of back and forth with the program manager along the way? I mean, I've heard that works pretty well, but
no, typically. I don't remember actually. Maybe at some point we wrote a pre-proposal.
Yeah.
And we had a call. I don't remember the details, but most of the engagement came after the grant was awarded.
Right. Good. Well, we're just about out of time. I don't know if you have any other words of wisdom that you'd like to pass along to aspiring entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah. So maybe let me see if I can. Yeah, I would say if I had to, this is now my second startup. So I went through several rounds of funding. I've been on, at the laboratory bench. I have experience in, technology-based startups. My most important advice actually would be, number one, choose your co-founders with the same level of scrutiny that you would choose your spouse. And I'm not joking. It's extremely important because you will go through hell. So choose extremely carefully your co-founders, and because it's the nature of a startup, it will rip you apart. So it's very difficult.
Yeah, I like to say there's no honeymoon period, right? Like you immediately get into all the problems once you start a business.
Yes, also because basically in the first few years of a startup, problems is the only thing you will have.
Yep.
That's it. You will have only problems. So then the second advice would be, work towards making something that people need. Customer discovery is extremely important. Don't develop technologies in a vacuum. Make sure that you talk to customers very early on. You really truly understand, is this needed? And a corollary to this would be, a good way to phrase it that a friend of mine once told me was, okay, I'm presenting this technology to this customer. I'm trying to assess if I am on the right track. So would the customer say that I am developing a vitamin or a painkiller?
Right.
So this is essential. If you're developing a vitamin, forget it. You're on the wrong path. Yep. Because it's so hard for people to adopt new technologies. It's so hard to invest that unless you offer something that is totally unique, that nobody else has, in at least one dimension, it has to be at least a 10x advantage over everybody else. And it has to completely eliminate a strong pain that someone has.
Yep.
I wouldn't do it otherwise.
That's great. That's a great
piece. This advice may not be relevant if you're developing maybe a social network or some other products. But in the world of technology, hard tech, deep tech, it is definitely important.
Excellent. Well, thank you for all that, Davide. Last question: how would you describe yourself in one word?
So
One word.
I am an explorer.
Explorer. I like it.
I am an explorer. Yeah.
That is fantastic.
I like that very much. Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. Good luck with everything at Inkbit. We really appreciate you being on this episode and sharing your story today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
To innovate, invent, and disrupt? We're your partner to fuel your growth. Contact us to learn more.